Welcome to this explainer on a seriously game-changing concept called the leverage stack by İsmail Günaydın. Look, today we're diving into exactly how to free solo operators from that crushing, endless cycle of administrative burnout. You know the feeling, right? If you've ever felt like your business is completely running you instead of the other way around, well, you absolutely need to hear this. For practically all of business history, if one person wanted to produce more than one person's worth of work, what did they do? They had to borrow other hands. We all just assumed we needed a team. But actually, headcount is just this really old delivery system for output. Fast forward to today, and you can literally buy leverage. You can get that magical ability to keep the work moving even when you're nowhere near your desk, all without taking on a massive payroll. So, here is exactly how we're going to build this thing. We're doing a layer-by-layer architectural build. First, we'll identify the bottlenecks, then we'll triage tasks, build automated pipelines, set up strict quality gates, automate those sneaky hidden gaps between tasks, and finally, learn how to trust a quiet system. Basically, we're taking that old human switchboard and replacing it with a true leverage stack. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the solo operator bottleneck. We've got to figure out exactly where the work jams up before we can even think about fixing it. Now, the usual advice for solo operators is always, work harder, use better keyboard shortcuts, wake up at 5 a.m. But that always fails. And this brilliantly illustrates why trying to out-discipline a structural bottleneck by working faster always fails. You see, you are acting as the switchboard. Every single price in question, every typo, every tiny decision routes right through your one human head. The line is just constantly busy. Our goal is to build the stack. This catches all that routine mechanical work so that only the true high-value judgment calls actually reach you. And hey, if you're feeling this switchboard meltdown, you are definitely not alone. There are roughly 30 million one-person businesses in the US dealing with this exact same bottleneck. To put this into perspective, let's look at a real case study from our source material, Nadia. So Nadia is a solo wedding photographer. She built a thriving business, but man, she was drowning. She was literally 7 months behind on delivering wedding albums. Couples were getting super frustrated, and her inbox, it was just a total nightmare. Which brings us to Section 2, the 4-step task triage. This is where we actually start mapping out that bottleneck by separating the mindless habit tasks from the true judgment tasks. Think of this sequence as your ultimate liberation list. When you track every task you do in a day, you have to run it through these 4 buckets in this exact order. Seriously, the strict sequence of these 4 buckets is the whole trick. First up, delete. Just ask, would anything actually break if this stopped? Second, automate. Is it identical every single time? Third, delegate. Does it need a human brain, but maybe not specifically yours? And finally, do. Is it genuinely, irreducibly yours? If you skip this order, you are going to waste so much time and money automating tasks that you really should have just deleted in the first place. Let's walk through Nadia's actual triage to see this in action. It turns out a lot of tasks masquerading as irreducibly hers were just habits she'd never handed off. Take the mood board. Nobody was opening it. So she deleted it. 0 cost, instant time saved. What about formatting the gallery delivery email? That passes the test for automation because it's identical every time. Then there's drafting replies to new inquiries. That definitely needs a warm tone, but it doesn't need her physically typing it from scratch at 11 p.m., right? So she delegated it to an AI system. Ultimately, only calling and editing the final gallery landed in her do bucket, because that editing eye, that's the true judgment couples are actually paying a premium for. And that transitions us perfectly into Section 3, briefs in automated pipelines. Because look, once you decide to delegate a task to AI, you have to know how to do it right. Otherwise, you just end up with generic, robotic fluff that reads like a parking ticket. The math behind why AI delegation works so incredibly well for solo operators is absolutely fascinating. Check out this 2025 study on AI productivity. The results are super telling. AI doesn't actually boost veterans all that much, but it lifts inexperienced workers, novices, by a massive 34%. 34%. Think about that for a second. As a solo operator, you are an absolute veteran at your craft, but you might be a total novice when it comes to admin stuff like writing sales copy. AI lifts you the most precisely where you have the most room to grow. But, and this is a big but, it only works if you give it the right instructions. A lazy one-line prompt is going to fail because it completely lacks the years of context you'd naturally give a real-life human assistant. That is where the reusable brief comes in, and it's got 4 parts. First, role and goal. What does a finished draft actually look like? Second, context. What's your specific tone and what are your constraints? Third, an example of good. You literally paste in a real artifact you've already written so the system catches your exact rhythm. And finally, failure modes. This is your personal don't-do list. Things like don't promise a delivery timeline or no exclamation marks. You write this brief exactly once and you attach it every time. Now, to stop yourself from manually copy-pasting that brief every single day, you build a pipeline. Nadia linked these 5 steps together beautifully. First, the trigger. A new inquiry email hits her inbox. Notice that's anchored to an event, not her memory. Second, the input. The raw message from the couple. Third, the instruction. Her reusable brief attaches itself automatically. Fourth, the work. The AI gets busy drafting the output. And crucially, fifth, the destination. The draft lands safely right in her drafts folder, flagged for review. So now an inquiry automatically generates this warm, perfectly toned draft just sitting there waiting for her to review and hit send.
All right, moving on to section 4, setting the quality gate. Because now that your machine is doing the heavy lifting, we have to tackle the anxiety of trusting those AI outputs. If you're just going to manually reread every single word, well, you haven't actually saved any time, have you?
First, you have to understand how the system fails. The source material talks about something called the jagged frontier. It's this invisible, unmarked border where an AI will abruptly go from brilliant competence to confident, fluent, and completely incorrect errors. You see, AI doesn't hesitate when it guesses wrong. A human typist might hedge a bit, sound a little doubtful. But an AI, it will state a completely wrong price with total, smooth confidence. You can't just scan the text looking for human-like doubt. You need a super strict gate to catch those confident errors.
So the crucial point is exactly how you structure your checking process. You split it into 2 lists, a skip list and a red flag list. The skip list is for stuff the model reliably nails, tone, grammar, general email structure. You trust it and you leave it alone. Never reread these out of nerves. If you do, you're right back to being the bottleneck. But then you have the red flag list. These are the hard facts. Prices, dates, names, promises. You absolutely never ship a red flag item without verifying it against an outside source, like checking the price against your actual package sheet rather than just blindly trusting the number you see in the draft. Okay, section 5. Automating the hidden handoffs. This is where we uncover those sneaky, invisible bottlenecks hiding in the gaps right between your completed tasks. You could have the most beautiful pipelines in the world, but if you are still the one manually moving data from station A to station B, you are still the glue holding it all together. You've got to hunt for these hidden handoffs where you're unconsciously playing courier. Listen to how you talk about your day. If you catch yourself saying things like, and then or if you're doing manual copy-pasting, or saying, I just check, or carrying these open loops in your head like, oh, I need to remember to invoice them tomorrow. Yep, those are all hidden handoffs. Take Nadia's handoff map, for example. She mapped out the when, the then, and the who. Look at what she automated. When a deposit is unpaid after 3 days, a reminder sends itself. Boom, automate. When a deposit is received, it gets added to the calendar. Automate. But notice what happens when a new inquiry arrives and she has to decide if a couple is a good fit. She marked that keep. She consciously kept her finger on the pulse of that high-stakes judgment call because AI just can't read the subtle red flags in a client's tone. She automated the routine carrying tasks, but fiercely guarded her true judgment calls. And that brings us to our final layer, section 6, trusting the quiet dashboard. This is honestly the hardest part for a lot of people, stopping yourself from actively supervising the very machine you just spent all this time building. Look, once the system is up and running, the temptation to just stare at it is overwhelming. But a dashboard you have to actively read is literally just another task with a prettier interface. Designing a wall of green tiles and metrics just recreates the switchboard. If you have to reach out and check it, it's a chore. What you actually need is an alerting system that reaches out to you, not some surveillance monitor that demands your constant attention. Okay, let's dive into this because it completely redefines how you interact with your business. Your system owes you exactly 3 answers. Number 1, what ran? This should be totally silent. It's logged in the background if you ever need it, but it never pings you. Number 2, what failed? This needs to be loud. It pings you immediately when something genuinely breaks, like a bounced credit card. Number 3, what needs a human? This is also loud. It pings you when the system correctly parks an edge case, like, say, a custom location request that needs your specific human judgment. Because of this exact setup, Nadia's routine everyday successes remained completely beautifully silent. But here is the kicker. You have to trust the silence. You cannot peek just to be sure. I know it's hard, but if you constantly check a silent system out of habit, you are actively teaching your brain to distrust the silence. Peeking is just a relapse into your old switchboard habits. Real leverage requires you to stop peeking. You have to learn to let a quiet morning mean that everything is absolutely fine.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, you've mapped the bottleneck, you've triaged your tasks, wired up the pipelines, and set the quality gates. The system is right there. The only question left is, will you keep watching the work out of pure habit, or will you finally step away from the switchboard? Because once that machine runs on its own, you are finally free to answer the most important question of all. What will you build next?